goes fast.
Oh, okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call to order the February 18th, 2025 meeting of the Long Lake City Council. It is now 6:31 p.m. All council members are present this evening. Item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's the loudest Pledge of Allegiance.
I was just gonna say that.
Audience participation. You should come more often.
Mayor Minor, I apologize for interrupting. You might want to do a mic check there quick.
Thank you. My mic was on. All right. That item number 3 is mayor comments, Long Lake news, meeting review, and updates. Let's give some updates on what's been occurring over the last couple of weeks since we last had a city council meeting. In this case, not a lot. It's a quiet time of the year, as we might expect, with the cold and the snow and everything. So thanks to Public Works for coming out on Friday and Saturday and clearing our fresh snowfall. I think it was a little bit more than what had been forecast. They did a great job on that. Last Wednesday, I went to the Northwest Hennepin League of Municipality monthly meeting, as I always do, so just a couple of quick updates from there. And that we had a good discussion among cities about code of conduct, which cities have codes of conduct for their city councils. And out of the 12-member cities, about 50% of them or so did. So I kind of relayed that something we were focusing on Long Lake here and going to work on. Stress we don't have any current issues when it comes to the code of conduct of our current city council, thankfully. But I thought it was something good, and I think most of us do, to kind of future-proof and put something in place, as many cities are doing. In fact, there was a Star Tribune article about this just 2 or 3 days ago, for those of you that may have noticed that, about this exact topic, and Long Lake and Orono and some other communities were mentioned. Besides that, I was selected as a chairperson of this group for the next year, so I'll do that and kind of lead this group the next year. Thank you. And then finally, the really good news was the city of Orono was voted in as a new member of the Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities. So it was a unanimous vote to vote them as a member. So that was great to see, and they'll be a great partner in that now. So there are some city updates from the last 2 weeks that I wanted to touch on. Item 4 is to approve this evening's agenda, which is in front of all council members. I'll entertain a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Items A through C on the consent agenda this evening, a fairly short consent agenda. Any questions for staff regarding, or comments regarding items on the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I can second that.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 6, open correspondence. Open correspondence is an item on the agenda during which the public may address the city council. No formal action is taken by the city council, and comments shall be limited to 5 minutes or less. And open correspondence comments may also be emailed to city staff by noon on the date of the meeting. So just a few additional comments. If you're here regarding the rowing club event this evening, this is not a public hearing as occurred at the planning commission meeting last week. So if you do have things you want to say regarding that item on the agenda tonight, or any item on the agenda or otherwise, this would be the time to do it during open correspondence this evening. And as I mentioned, comments should be limited to 5 minutes or less. So staff will be running a timer on this, and we're not going to shut you down completely at 5 minutes, but just ask you to wrap it up when you hear that timer there. We also have submitted many folks emailed city staff by noon today, and those comments that were emailed to city staff, or those emails or letters, have been included in our council packets, so we have those up here. We also had, I think, one or two come in after that period, so maybe we'll let actually members in attendance speak first, and then at the end of the public comments, we'll have staff read any emails or letters that were received after the noon deadline, so the council can hear those. All right, so with all that being said, we'll go ahead and open up the open correspondence period. If you're interested, come up to the microphone there, and please state your name and address before speaking.
Brad Erickson. No. Sorry. Start the clock again. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Brian Miller, 295 Lakeview Avenue. I'm a 26-year resident of Long Lake, 63-year resident of Lake Minnetonka area. We need to be sure that we recognize that everyone has a right to our lakes as they are part of the public trust, meaning they are considered to belong to everyone and the government acts as the trustee. Everyone has access to them. The Water Patrol oversees the lakes in Hennepin County under Minnesota law. They are in charge. In April of 2022, the city learned that there would no longer be additional permitting or oversight of the LLRC operations. And we learned that LLRC is not under supervision on the water by the city of Long Lake, and only their land use at Birches is subject to a CUP going forward. Lieutenant Klein from the Hennepin County Water Patrol came to speak at this council, April of 2022, and here's some bullet points of what he had to say. Since 2014, the patrol has received a total of 116 calls for service on Long Lake. One was regarding LLRC. A lot of the calls they receive on the smaller lakes in the county are from people who live on the lake and think the lake is theirs and don't like other people using their lake. If anyone sees an issue on the lake, they should call 911. And one of the council members asked a question of the Lieutenant Klein, and his response was, I can't tell LLRC to limit their public access or number of boats, just like I can't tell you how many jet skis you can have. And he went on to further comment, I've seen 50 to 100 sailboats and tens of thousands of boats going all around them on Lake Minnetonka, and literally no complaints from either party. The motorized realize they have to give way to non-motorized, and that's what happens. We don't have any accidents. That includes paddle boaters and canoes, and I can't kick any of them off. And again, the directive from Lieutenant Klein was that if anyone has any issues, they should call 911. So when deliberating any amendments to a CUP on the lake shore, you should look to prohibit yourselves from such topics as water skiing and whether anyone feels LLRC is in their way or preventing them from using the lake, or too hard to see, or deliberating the need to have common sense rules, debating LLRC's location on the lake or number of boats they have out there, considering their presence and restricting other users of the lake. I will skip that one. How many people are in a coach boat, and whatever activities they have going on the lake. In addition to findings necessary to approve your CUP in your packet, the instructions by Hannah and the council, the instructions by Hannah that the council needs to consider are, is the LLRC currently in compliance with this existing CUP? Is there adequate parking, and will the expanded hours have a negative impact on the neighboring properties? And that's it. I believe any other deliberation about anyone being on the lake and control thereof, either directly or indirectly, in any way, shape, or form, begins violating the people's right to be there. Again, Hennepin County advised anyone who has an issue, call 911. And it just might come to be that one day, Long Lake is no longer your favorite water skiing lake. Things change when we have to share the earth with everybody else. I, of course, grew up water skiing, and I miss the days of how Big Island was in the 70s. It was free and clear. It's inevitable that we will see population growth on Long Lake and have no one to blame for the overcrowded feeling on the lake other than the population bomb. The city just jammed a couple more houses on Long Lake behind One Stop, doubled the housing capacity at Nelson Beach, constructed Chivago, the Stacks, increasing the city's population by 20%, I believe. So no doubt, many of these new folks will want access to the lake. And I just talked to two people whom you all know very well, independently, and they kayak in Long Lake and often fear for their lives from the water skiers. So, it goes both ways. So if city officials have concerns about safety, how about handing out boat guides at the launch? They're free from the DNR. Maybe encourage folks to take a boating course. And if I still have time, since we have such a great crowd here, I'd like to recognize the mayor and city council and the city staff, who I believe will go down as legends in this community, for the abuse they took for the past 3 years over the Long Lake Fire Department, both personally and professionally. They each went above and beyond the call of duty, spent countless hours of their own personal time defending the city and the fire department, and they stood ground on our behalf in the face of true adversity. It was painful to witness most of the time, but they did it, and they did it admirably. And for that, they'll go down as legends, and we owe them a debt of gratitude.
Thank you, Brian. All right, anyone else? I bet there is.
Mayor, council members, thank you. My name is Charles Buffington. I actually live in 6401 Landings Court in Excelsior. I am a board member of LLRC, and I just come as a character witness for LLRC. We moved here 4 years ago from Memphis, Tennessee. And moving here, as many of you probably know, is challenging, coming from a different place. But we came here and immediately found a community. My daughter, who's standing next to me, I was going to speak about her, but since she's here, she can speak on her own behalf, and I'll keep my comments short. But the one thing that I have seen here since we've gotten here is the sense of community, not just with the juniors, but also with the masters. I've had people pull me over and talk to me and tell me about how life-changing, literally life-changing this club is, where people had Parkinson's, and because they were able to row and be a part of a community, that it kept their symptoms at bay. I've heard people who were retired and needed something to look forward to, and being a member of this club gave them that purpose. And for these juniors, especially my daughter, who was not a part of any organized sports before we moved here, found a community and found an organized sport that not only gave her a place, but also just motivated her and also helped her become a not just an athlete, but it also aided her in her acceptance into MIT just recently.
Congratulations.
So I just come here today just to ask that you consider us, consider our request, because it's important. It's not just important for me personally, but just from someone from the outside to see how impactful this community is, this LRC community. I know there are other people that might push back and have some objection to what our ask is, but I ask that you really reconsider. And with that, I'll give our remaining time to my daughter.
Yeah, my name is Joyce Buffington of the same address. My first day in Minnesota, I was on Long Lake learning to row. Like, very first day, I was immediately registered, and it was the first community I became a part of when I moved to Minnesota, but it's also been like a consistent community throughout my time at high school, and a community full of people that I definitely would not have met otherwise. Like, we come from all different schools, and I know juniors on our team have driven like up to an hour to be here at practice every day after school in the summer to be part of the Long Lake community. So thank you for listening to our request.
Thanks, both of you.
Hi, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Jen Wiseman, and I live in the western side of Plymouth, just 10 minutes from Long Lake. I'm a member of LLRC, and I'm here tonight to ask you to allow us to add some practice time. This is the beginning of my fourth season with LLRC, and after losing an incredible 205 pounds, I had always wanted to try rowing and figured now was as good a time as any. I started rowing at the age of 51 in the late spring of 2022, and I began with the Orono Community Education class, Learn to Row, taught by Ava Winkles, who is here tonight. She is now LLRC's junior team head coach. I took some private lessons from Ava the rest of that first summer, and by the fall was good enough to start rowing with the LLC Masters team. And that October, I rowed my first regatta at the head of the Mississippi race in Minneapolis. Sandy McCarthy, who's right here, our Masters head coach, put me in a very experienced boat for my first race, which meant that those incredible women rowers would basically throw away a race in order to give me an opportunity to race. I won't name all the people on the boat that day, but I was super nervous, and my only goal for that race was not to knock my oars into the person in front of me, which was a big task, really. And we managed to make it down the course, and remarkably, I was not last. I quickly developed a passion for rowing, and I can tell you that it is a very difficult sport, not only with its physical endurance, strength, and balance requirements, but great technical skill that takes years to perfect. And being out on Long Lake just before sunset, hearing the dip of the oars in the water in unison is pretty magical. The challenge of syncing up my legs, arms, and torso movements with my fellow teammates in the boat to send it gliding through the water down the length of Long Lake is a single-minded pursuit in which I have fallen in love with perfecting. The feeling of the breeze and the warm sun on my face while breathing in and out, working my muscles hard with my teammates, is a great kind of physical release. And looking forward to having a conversation, a drink, and snacks with my teammates at Birches on the Lake afterwards is really divine. The best part of this sport, however, is the community it builds. The teammates with whom I row have become trusted friends. We are family for one another. Recently, after my divorce this fall, several of my fellow women rowers, including my coach, showed up at 7 a.m. on a November morning to help me move furniture at my new home. And just 3 weeks ago, when I unexpectedly had an appendectomy, my rowing teammates took care of me, bringing me meals and keeping me company while I healed up. And when one of us has been struggling recently with a life-threatening illness, we're there to pick her up, celebrate milestones in her recovery, and do whatever it takes to support one another. LLRC builds communities with the wider Long Lake Orono communities as well, and the efforts we put forth in our charitable works with the Long Lake Fire Department and the local Orono Lions Club Snowball Open Ice Golf event, to name just a few of our endeavors. I hope you will seriously consider granting our request for more time to grow this special community by granting us more time on the water to be the best rowing club we can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else?
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, City staff, my name is Quentin Dornish, and I'd just like to share a few words on behalf of Long Lake Rowing Crew in support of their desire to expand its hours of operation. Quite simply, the Long Lake community has a special organization right in your backyard that kind of flies under the radar. Despite being a relatively new and small club that does not have its own boathouse, LLRC has managed to rack up quite the pedigree in its decade of existence. The club competes in events all over the state and even all over the continent. We regularly compete in the Northwest International Rowing Association's regional championship regatta held in Canada and have had success there. We have sent boats to the U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships, and we have members that are regulars at the head of the Charles Regatta, which is considered rowing what the Boston Marathon is to running or the Masters is to golf. The majority of these athletes are all homegrown and trained. When we participate in these events, we are not just representing our team, we are also representing the entire Long Lake community. The city of Long Lake is represented on a regional, national, and even an international scale. And the reputation is known among other rowing clubs. When they hear the name Long Lake at the competitions, they know they've got their work cut out for them. And we wear our name with pride. Furthermore, this reputation has drawn coaches to our club from both coasts that have their own advanced pedigrees. In short, the city of Long Lake has name recognition in ways that cities like Wayzata or Stillwater probably never will. Besides having the reputation of a competitive club, we are the only rowing club in the West Metro. And this adds to the already unique charm of Long Lake's character. So essentially, you have another tool in your toolbox to promote visiting Long Lake. You can come to Long Lake for the good food, the small town charm, the beautiful parks and lakefront. Oh, and come see the rowing club. A rower's experience much like a pilot's or an equipment operator's, is more accurately measured in hours. If you've been part of a club for 5 years, but are only able to practice 4 or 5 hours in a typical week, you're going to be at a disadvantage compared to someone who's been in another club for those same 5 years, but has the opportunity to practice double the hours in a typical week. In short, added hours will offer the opportunity to send additional skilled boats to competitions. And in addition, we hope the added hours will allow us to offer the sport to more community members and improve the skills of current rowers. The point I'm framing is that when Long Lake Rowing does well, Long Lake does well as well. I hope you will consider allowing the club to hold additional practice hours on the lake, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Quentin?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep it really quick. My name's Jen Osley. This is my son, Sebastian Osley, the reason why I'm here. I joined the board of Long Lake just this last summer, and my son joined 2 summers ago. So we're coming up on our 2nd anniversary with Long Lake after moving here from Spain. This is the 3rd part of the world that my son has rowed in. He rowed in the East Coast in Connecticut and DC, then rowed in Spain in 2 places, 2 coasts, and we chose Long Lake out of all of our options because of its warm community and the adorable downtown. When I came, I was really impressed in its tight little, city center. And you'll see a letter from me in your packet talking about my consumer, isms since we got here 2 years ago. We've spent thousands in Long Lake, and so do all the junior parents. We are here until our kids can take the wheel themselves to get here, and we are always needing something. We go to the hardware store, we go to the floral shop with the plants, we go to the market to pick up the milk and the different things that we need. And sometimes we have a treat and go out to eat, and sometimes we invest in a lot of bicycles and other equipment because on a Saturday morning they need to be at practice, and we want to do other things too, but most of it is rowing. Am I right? So, basically, what I want to tell you is, besides what we're spending in Long Lake, we are not taking up a huge amount of space for what we're providing. And we just want to make the point that the parking is set. We are good to go with Birches. They're happy with us. We want the additional hours just to be able to give the people that want to compete the chance to be everything that they can be internationally in Canada this summer. Driving up to Lake of the Woods area, or as my son has done last 2 years, go to Philadelphia and row with some of the best schools in the nation and get scouted as he has by D1 schools, and those opportunities that would make Long Lake infamous, as we just heard, and opportunities for people like my son. So we really appreciate it, and we hope to see you guys coming out and learning how to row, because I could see some nice able bodies that look like they could learn and join us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Deborah Fletcher. I live in Minneapolis, actually, but I'm spending more time out here, probably with the rowing club, than I spend doing any recreation or physical activity in Minneapolis. This club has been a lifeline for me. I practiced medicine for over 30 years, then I was diagnosed with Parkinson's 14 years ago. And with exercise being the only thing we know that may slow progression of the disease, exercise became my new job. And rowing is one of the few things I've sort of had to give up biking because I tip over too much. Walking is even, I'm prone to falls, but rowing feels like heaven. And I'm certain that I would be chair-bound by now had I not been rowing over these years. In fact, during COVID, I had a bit of a setback because all the indoor activities we were doing were stopped. I've watched this club. I've been here from near to the beginning, and I've watched groups of young rowers. The juniors come in. their eighth or between eighth and ninth grade, and I watch the rowers that are a year or two ahead of them mentor them in. The belonging to a group and having to function as a group is has fostered such amazing kids and gives me an opportunity to be around oldsters and youngsters. There aren't many other places in my life where I'd be interacting with kids in high school. This LLRC has an incredible reputation. I've rowed in regattas in Ontario and Philadelphia at the head of the Schuylkill and several others. And the reputation here is that we, despite not focusing on competitiveness, despite focusing on each other, bringing out the best in each other, and focusing on mastery, which I think for an adolescent is about the most important thing they can gain, mastery in something. And despite that, for a club this small, we've had incredibly competitive and winning history. And the culture, the time pressure is starting to sort of shift priorities among us toward competition for who gets time on the water and who doesn't get time on the water. And I think that could be crushing to our culture. And I think our culture and what gets handed on to high school kids and oldsters alike is something of great value to the community. And Long Lake, you have the fortune or the misfortune, depending on your perspective, of having the only lake in the area that's really ideal for rowing. It takes some special characteristics to be a lake that one can actually row on. And from my perspective, fostering it over wakeboard boats that are stirring up the weeds and wrecking docks and that sort of thing would be a plus for Long Lake. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Honorable Mayor and council members, my name is Sandra McCarthy, and I'm one of the rowers and coaches of Long Lake Rowing Crew. I am asking you to respectfully request and support an increase in our hours, available times that we have access to the lake. As a nonprofit organization, LLRC deeply values our time on the water, and with a diverse range of athletes from beginners to national team caliber, additional access would enable us to provide more focused and individualized instruction tailored to all of our skill levels. So for me, as a coach, trying to put drastically different skill levels in the same boat is very, very difficult, right? So spreading that out a little bit allows me to give each athlete what they need so they can progress and continue to enjoy rowing safely. We are not just people in boats. We are active, engaged members of the Long Lake community. Our athletes, coaches, and families frequent local businesses such as your hardware store, Anytime Fitness, Otten Brothers, Caribou, the post office, the gas stations. Chunks Auto services our travel trailer, and we have been longtime patrons of Safeway Mini Storage. We dine at all your local restaurants, and I can personally attest that every Long Lake member has recommended Gear West and Birch's to at least 10 friends or family members who do not live in the Long Lake area. We are also not just people in boats. We are high school athletes who juggle academic commitments, jobs, family obligations, and a deep dedication to a sport that has provided many of us with scholarships to attend colleges we may not otherwise have had access to. Through rowing, our athletes gain invaluable lessons in teamwork, discipline, cooperation, leadership, and responsibility, all skills that will serve them well as they transition into adulthood. We are not just people in boats. We are a community of all ages, of much-needed personal support. We are cancer survivors, stroke survivors, heart disease survivors. Yet we persist, supporting each other through tough times, whether it's the loss of a loved one, personal struggles, or chronic health conditions. Of course, we also celebrate the joyous milestones in life, including graduations, new opportunities, marriages, and welcoming of babies and even grandbabies. We are not just people in boats. We are a vibrant, tight-knit community that contributes to the spirit and the economy of the city of Long Lake. We are Long Lake Rowing Crew, and we wear our team logo and our colors proudly. Thank you. Sorry.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, thank you for the time and being here tonight, opening the floor for all of us. My name is Angie Lipson. I live actually in Orono, but I'm a business owner. I own AccuHouse Acupuncture Med Spa at 1611 West Wayzata Boulevard. I am also a member of the rowing team, and I am on the board as well. So this is a very close to home thing. My kids have all rowed with Long Lake Rowing. My mother took courses through the community education class. At 70 years old, she was able to go out and try it. So I find this to be a very high value to our community, that people can come out and experience a new sport. It's available. It's with the additional hours that the CUP would allow. This would allow for more community education classes, more private lessons for people to be able to try this sport. So it's not just for the elite. You know, we are not very wealthy people, all of us that participate in this sport. So they have scholarships for students. It's a very great opportunity for Long Lake residents to try something that's usually only for the elite, or that's how we all perceive it. So in opening up these hours, this could give the team more opportunity to have more time for more community education classes. I also love, as a business owner, that many of my clients, our office faces the lake. So we always see the rowers going off back and forth, and many of our clients really enjoy that. It is part of an experience of coming to Long Lake. We pull from the entire West Metro and up to Northwest and Minneapolis, pull all to come into AccuHouse for services. And so often they're asking me, where's a good restaurant? Where can I go to watch these rowers? So we're often saying, oh, here's the park, the Nelson Park. You can go there. You can go over to Birch's. You can enjoy some other restaurants in town. And so this is a great way for people to be interested in Long Lake and for them to spend their dollars here as well. So I thank you for considering our request for additional hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
Hi, I'm Kelly Grady. I live at 271 Green Hill Lane in Long Lake, and I'm here to talk about something that's the opposite of water, fire. As most of you know, I like to call myself a common sense fire safety advocate, and I've been working at that, trying to get Orono and Long Lake into negotiations for the future of fire service. And I went to the Orono City Council meeting, the last one, and I read an email that I received, and I thought that it would be worthwhile to come and read it here at this meeting. It's from a neighboring firefighter, not from Long Lake or Orono Fire, not from Mound for that matter either, but a neighboring firefighter. And I don't know this person. I have never spoken to him or met him. But he sent me this email. It says, "Hello, Kelly. I just wanted to thank you for this page, Figure Out Fire, and for bringing everything that's been going on in Orono and Long Lake to light. While I live in a neighboring city, I won't disclose for his privacy, I work for a neighboring fire department. I have been disgusted by the actions of the previous Orono council, save Elisa Benson. I was thrilled to see the election results and had a chance to attend the Orono City Council meeting last night. It was the first night of the new council, where even as someone who lives outside the city, I could feel the incredibly palpable sense of relief among the residents. No question here, just to thank you for your work and have a wonderful day." This firefighter and I went back and forth a little bit, just corresponding, and he later on went to say, "I'm also hearing bits and pieces of what the future hopefully holds for the service of Long Lake and Orono. Nothing substantive, but it's sounding much more positive in a short time than even a few months ago. The council meetings have been much more civilized to watch. It's been a wonderful change to see, and that's coming from someone outside of your city." And I just thought that this was interesting. He is many of you know that I've spoken to, at this point, hundreds of residents, neighboring firefighters, chiefs, and industry experts. And the emails that I have received from the firefighters, the conversations that I've had, especially from the ones that are outside, have all been in support of keeping the two departments together in support of a shared services agreement, whatever that looks like. And I guess the reason why I brought this to Orono and why I'm bringing it here today is because I realized that we're early in the negotiations, that the new Orono Council was only seated or sworn in about a month ago. But I also know that there's an anxiousness, in our cities to get new information about what's happening. I was happy to see the article in the Laker this week, and I am excited to hear about promising movement towards a shared services solution, so that's wonderful. But I think it's really an interesting note that the other cities are watching. This extended cities, our mutual aid partners, are watching what's going on, and I have heard truly nothing but positive for what Long Lake has done to make sure that this department stays together, and a championing of a JPA, shared services, whatever you want to call it, tax district or whatever. So although the only water I've really spoken of in the last 2 years come out of fire hose, as a citizen of Orono, or I'm sorry, of Long Lake, I'm not a rower. Maybe I should be. But I am a watcher of water. I spend a lot of time at our lake, just walking around it or watching it. And I have enjoyed watching the Long Lake Rowing Club. I was not in support of I can't remember, some sort of training or storage facility that was proposed for Summit Beach a few years ago in Orono, because I felt that it restricted public access to the water. And I'd just like to be able to see the rowing club, which I do enjoy watching, continue to be able to do that on the lake. And maintaining access to the water is important to me so that it's accessible for all. And I don't know how many hours they're asking for. I can't imagine it's that much. And they're usually out there real early before most of us wake up. So anyways, for what it's worth. Anyways, thank you so much for all of your work, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Kelly.
Honor Mayor, City Council, my name is Hossein Lipson, 2385 Glendale Cove Lane. You already heard from my wonderful, eloquent, and very accomplished wife. But wanted to come up for three main purposes. One, to thank you for allowing us to use the lake as we do now. The resources we have really are people and the lake. We don't have as much, and we're not as well resourced as other clubs, so we try to do the best we can. So that segues to my second point. The reason why I'm coming up is to ask for your help for the approval of the incremental hours and usage, so that juniors that you've already heard about, we can create more of their stories, and we can create and spread the accomplishments of these junior rowers. And with that, as you've heard from our coach, the extra time really would help it and make a huge difference. So I'm asking on behalf of them. And then to finally just share my story. I'm never thought I could row. So this group has taken me in, and I've been humbled, amazingly humbled, but not one word of discouragement from this team. They've all encouraged me, patted me on the back, and said, you can do it. So, sorry for getting emotional, but just want to share my personal story of what this group means to me and access to the lake. And we are local business owners, and we live and breathe and try to contribute as much as we can. So thank you.
Anyone?
Hello,
Mayor and City Council. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I'm just going to read from my letter, which you already have a copy of. My family-owned business has officed above Otten Brothers Building close to Long Lake for 17 years. I shop, buy gas, dine, go to the vet, walk the dog, spend my time at Long Lake. It is currently my hometown. Also, I am a member of the Long Lake Rowing Club crew, writing in support of the request for extended hours. As a member of the crew, I have seen and enjoyed the benefits of LLRC and what it provides to rowers brand new to the sport and those who have been rowing for many years. Rowing is an inclusive sport, bringing together all ages, abilities, and skill levels, as you've heard here tonight. Juniors to masters, beginners to elite level, on all on the same water, and sometimes in the same boats. It would be wonderful to see this opportunity opened up to more people. With extended operating hours, the club and the City Council would be able to do that a little better. I also wanted to mention, and this may or may not be in the rest of the letter, we have a lot of junior rowers who go off to college, get scholarships, maybe get a scholarship, maybe row club, maybe row on their own. And then they come back here and they want to create a home here or spend time with their families, and they want to row with Long Lake for the master's program, and we're trying to fit them into our hours, and it's really, really hard. So we need a few more hours to get them on the water and to let them be able to row right along with us. Thank you.
Could you state your name, please? We didn't catch that.
Sorry. Liz Littmer, 2930 Parkview Drive, Medina.
Thank you, Liz. Anyone else? Okay. Oh.
You didn't think I was going to let it go by. Honorable Mayor, City Council, City employees, my name is Pete Yenchen. Address is 2515 Bobolink Road. I'm the president of the Long Lake Rowing Crew. I really appreciate you taking time and for the opportunity we have had to share our thoughts on Long Lake Rowing Crew. And not part of this, but after all this, thanks for your patience. We took a real short agenda and turned it into a fairly long meeting, so it was kind of like a live version of Boys in the Boats. I have 3 children that rowed in Long Lake Rowing, and my daughter, her skill level reached a point that she's now helping coach the juniors that were her peers just a year and a half ago. So there's some great things that happen for all the kids there. 2 years ago, family peer pressure, I started rowing as a master's. I'd like to lend a little perspective on the sport of rowing that non-rowers might not otherwise have. Given that there's almost 15,000 lakes in Minnesota and a whole bunch of rivers, there's really only about 9 organized rowing clubs. And then also for a little bit of context, the Minneapolis Rowing Club was founded in 1877. The Duluth Rowing Club was founded in 1866. The Minnesota Boat Club was founded in 1870. So my point for sharing the stats are twofold. First, that a rowing club is a very unique entity for a municipality to claim to be a part of. It's a really unique thing. And secondly, to contrast Long Lake with the other groups. We don't have a boathouse, and we've only been around for 10 years. However, in spite of the seeming handicaps, Long Lake Rowing has come to be one of the most respected clubs in the state of Minnesota, regionally and nationally, as you've heard, as our rowers go on to row all over the United States, both in elite regattas and at the D1 schools. And the thing that strikes me is as they are in any and all of these places, invariably they're asked, where did you row before? And they don't say Orono Rowing, and they don't say Wayzata Rowing, and they don't say Minnetonka Rowing. They say Long Lake Rowing. Although our resources have been somewhat limited compared to other clubs, it's the great coaches and the great rowers that we have had that has resulted in this, what I think is a real terrific part of Long Lake. So to finish up, I'll just say this. A few years from now, it's going to be a whole different group of rowers, and it's going to be a whole different group of city leaders. And as you reflect back on all the good work that each of you have done for Long Lake, I'm fairly confident that as you look back, you wouldn't have regrets for having promoted a local treasure like Long Lake Rowing Crew. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Is that officially it? All right. And we did have some submitted comments via letter or email to staff, so you can go ahead and read those, Jeanette. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one. Everything else was included in your packets, both from the Planning Commission and from everything I received in the last couple business days. But we do have one letter here from a Long Lake resident, and I was asked to read this aloud under open correspondence tonight, given that it was after the deadline. So, without further ado, it begins with, Dear esteemed councilmen and councilwomen, my name is Anthony Quill, and I live with my, you can go ahead and time me if you want, Scott. And I live with my wife and 2 kids at 305 Glenmore Lane. We're active lake users, but not as rowers nor as powerboat users. We're canoeists, paddleboarders, and fishermen. I wanted to reach out to express my concern regarding the Long Lake Rowing Crew's request for a CUP amendment and to kindly ask that you deny their request. Long Lake is a small body of water enjoyed by countless lake users. On any summer day, you'll see a mix of water skiers, fishermen, kayakers, stand-up paddleboarders, swimmers, long-distance training as well, canoers, and rowers. It can be a lot for this body of water to handle, and as a canoeist, it can be quite dangerous. The truth is, 63.5 hours under the current CUP is sufficient and could be argued as already excessive for private organized use of a small body of water. Like canoes, kayaks, and SUPs, rowing shells have technical right-of-way on the lake. Unlike canoes, the kayaks, and SUPs, rowing shell navigation is done by a coach and through small mirrors on the shell. The rower is not facing the direction of travel and is not fully aware of his or her surroundings. Rowers are deep in concentration and exertion, and in my experience are often unaware of their surroundings. This isn't necessarily a bad thing and is generally not an issue during off-peak times on a lake and during the shoulder season. It is, however, an issue on busy summer evenings and weekends, which is where the prior and current amendments have focused. I've seen countless times where rowing shells approach fishing boats on their trolling motors, SUPs, canoes, and kayaks, completely unaware of how close they are. I've also seen water skiers and wakeboarders that have fallen, or folks swimming from their boats come into the path of an unsuspecting rowing shell. Allowing additional hours during peak lake usage would put everyone in danger, rowers included, and would take away from the rights of everyone to use this public asset safely. Another issue to discuss is parking. 2 years ago, the neighborhood across from Birch's worked with the city and Birch's ownership and staff to find a solution to parking issues that impacted the neighborhood. It was a true team effort, and I was very fortunate to have partners like the city and the staff at Birch's to work with. My concern is that adding additional parking needs during peak hours could damage this solution. We already see a lot of neighborhood traffic on busy weekends as people look for parking. We still have occasional folks that park in the neighborhood or on the side of Wayzata Boulevard. Side note, by the way, that's illegal. I just don't think the hours the LLRC are looking to operate work within the constraints of a busy restaurant on a narrow street surrounded by residential housing. Finally, I'd also like to call the council's attention to the events of years prior, as we have some new faces that weren't here for the arduous process of protecting Summit Beach Park and the lake from de facto privatization from the same organization. In the end, it was the loud voices of our entire community that brought sanity and clarity to the LLRC's efforts to develop Summit Beach Park and increase their usage of the lake. The community's already spoken on this issue and make it clear that there is a place for LLRC, but exactly how it stands today, no more, no less.
I love the rowing club and appreciate the opportunities they offer to a subset of our community and empathize with the challenges they face in finding space to practice their sport. I'm a youth hockey coach, and Orono Youth Hockey Association faces similar challenges in finding ice time for our kids. I benefit from the awareness that youth hockey is not a be-all, ends-all, and only benefits a small subset of our community, those that play or have an interest in the sport. While I work tirelessly to expand opportunities for my athletes and their families, I also understand that public spaces are for everyone, period. And as a result, Orono is short on ice time for the growing team, but that is okay. We'll continue to look for solutions that benefit our kids without taking away from the broader community that we know and love. My hope is that the LLRC can do the same, and that denying this amendment will help move us in that direction. And that was his comment in full.
All right, thank you for reading that. Good
If
job.
you don't mind, Mayor, though, I do want to comment on one thing. I did not know, I've seen isolated incidents reported to me of this, but I did not know that anyone was still parking on Wayzata Boulevard in that area to visit the restaurant for any purpose. And just to note that that is not legal. That is not eligible parking by any means. So anyone, for any reason, should not be parking on Wayzata Boulevard. I would say it's pretty unsafe to do so, to be quite honest. So if you do see that, I probably couldn't encourage you enough to call 911. That's a bit of a safety hazard there, so.
All right, very true. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I provide one more comment from Gretchen Cashmore,
Okay.
303 Lakeview?
Why don't you need to step up to the microphone then, sir?
From Gretchen Cashmore, she's the president of the Union Cemetery, and she wanted to be here tonight, but she has a sore throat. She says she is a supporter of the rowing club, and it's okay for you to use the parking at the cemetery, as you have been doing, as discussed with Amy. So they do have parking available.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 7A, planning case, under regular business, planning case 2025-01, Long Lake Rowing Crew Conditional Use Permit, or CUP, amendment request. Hannah, are you going to start us off in this discussion?
Yes.
Great.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm just going to go over a brief overview of the application, the planning commission meeting, and then what the city council needs to consider this evening. So we have the applicant, Amy Johnson of the Long Lake Rowing Crew, at the Birches property at 1310 Wayzata Boulevard West. Property is owned by Hunt Green LLC. And tonight you have before you a request to amend the conditional use permit to expand the hours of operation for the Long Lake Rowing Crew at the Birches property. Here's an aerial view of the site. The LLRC has operated at Birches for about a decade. Their use of the property includes the storage of their rowing equipment as well as lake access. This use is allowed under an existing conditional use permit that was approved back in 2017. In 2019, the LLRC requested an amendment to the permit, which was approved additional temporary storage racks, expanded hours of operation, and the ability to offer rowing sprints as part of Birches Fall Fest without going through the special event permit each year. The current CUP amendment request is, again, to expand the hours of operation. That is the only component of this request. They describe several reasons in the narrative. The first being to provide additional availability for community members to try rowing, to provide an additional coaching session for the current LLRC rowers, to reduce the rower to coach ratio, which they state would increase the safety of the rowers, and then also to allow the rowers to be better grouped by skill level, which would allow the rowing shells to be closer to the coach launch, which they state would be a benefit to other lake users. Here you have a table. This is the hours of operation as they were presented to the Planning Commission last week. So the original 2017 CUP allowed for 5 hours on 5 of the 7 days of the week. The 2019 CUP expanded that quite a bit with 14 hours Monday through Wednesday, 11 and a half hours on Thursday, and then 5 hours each on Friday and Saturday. Tonight, or the previous request included an expansion of 2.5 hours from 5:30 to 8 on Thursday afternoon evenings, an earlier hour on Friday and Saturday mornings to begin at 6 instead of 7, and then also an additional time slot of noon to 5:30 p.m. on Fridays. The Planning Commission held the public hearing and considered those proposed hours last week. They did vote 3-1 to recommend denial. That option is option B in the resolutions that have been provided to you. Since the Planning Commission meeting, the LLRC has updated their request, so they have removed the Friday afternoon bit of their request. So now they are requesting the additional 5:30 to 8 p.m. on Thursdays, and then just the 6 to 7 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. A lot of the conversation obviously centered around the peak hours of Birches and the parking, and so that was kind of the reasoning for them withdrawing that portion of the request. So we're looking at a request for 4.5 hours over their current CUP operating hours. In your packet were the existing conditional use permit conditions. This regulates things like the number of storage racks that they have, conditions for using the site, that solid waste needs to be collected, no noise amplification equipment used, insurance requirements, dock and boat lift requirements, requiring that the use be operated in compliance with any laws and restrictions from all applicable agencies, no major boat maintenance activities allowed on the property, continual compliance with the DNR requirements, maintaining the site in compliance with everything that's been presented at the various reviews for their existing CUP. Know that more than 2 motorized boats may be used. The use of the property would be limited to the approved hours of operation. And then any extra special events must go through the special event permitting process with, of course, the exception of Fall Fest. So I wanted to point attention to conditions 12 and 13. These are from the original 2017 CUP, and they mention use of the lake by the Long Lake Rowing Crew. As we all know, the use of the lake cannot be regulated by the CUP. We are solely regulating use of the Birches property related to the Long Lake Rowing Crew. Resolution option C, which has been sent to you today, contains minor updates to these conditions to remove the references to the CUP regulating the usage of Long Lake. The updated condition 13 on the screen now also clarifies that the use of the property by rowing club members operating under rowing club authority are also subject to the CUP hours. That's always been the intent, that the use of Birches property by the rowing club includes any member activities, regardless of group size, but over the years that's not always occurred. So that's just tightening that up. And so this is found in the resolution that would be approving the shortened amended CUP request for the 4 additional hours that I've described. If the council chooses to go with option B, that would not be amending any conditions, and the conditions would remain as they sit today and from the 2017 CUP, if that makes sense. So we have findings within the code necessary to approve a conditional use permit. These focus on the impact to neighboring property owners, consistency with the comp plan, impact of development and improvement of surrounding property, served adequately by public facilities, will not involve basically nuisance characteristics to neighboring property owners or the public as a whole, and so on. So the questions that I presented in the packet to kind of focus on, and these certainly are not all inclusive, the council may discuss any aspects of this that they wish, but kind of what I see this centering around is the Long Lake Rowing Crew currently in compliance with all conditions of their CUP? Is there adequate parking at the property to serve the expanded hours? The expanded evening hours do coincide with peak restaurant hours, and we know very well that Birches does have parking issues, even though there is use of the cemetery. And then 3, will the expanded hours have a negative impact on neighboring property owners? So I've got the resolutions, just to clarify here. Option A would have been the resolution approving the CUP amendment as originally submitted. This one's kind of irrelevant at this point because the LLRC has amended their request. So we've got option B, which would be denial of the CUP amendment, and then option C would be a resolution approving the updated CUP amendment request. So it would be option B for denial and option C for approval. So that is all I have for you tonight. Any questions for me?
I have two. Option C doesn't require another public hearing with the Planning Commission?
Correct.
And why is that?
The council is allowed to consider, the public hearing was held and considered, and they've amended their request, but it's not necessary to go through public hearing again.
Because it was narrowed?
Correct, because they weren't asking for more, they're asking for less actually, so the hours that they were requesting were still considered at the public hearing last week.
And then my other question was on the current hours. You show that Monday through Wednesday is 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., but I thought the actual CUP stated that there was 3 weeknights per week that could be 5:30 to 8. Is it just that they've chosen to make it those 3 days?
Correct.
So if they wanted a Thursday, they could go Thursday to 8 and then go to 5:30 on another day if they, and stay within the current.
Per the current CUP, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's an interesting observation.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. All right, other questions for Hannah? We also have Chair of our Planning Commission here, Roger Adams. If there are any questions from the council regarding discussions that occurred during the public hearing of the Planning Commission. And I just want to reiterate to the audience that there's no public comment regarding this section. There's no more opportunity to address the council by the public. We may call up applicants from the two applicants, i.e. Amy and Pete, to present to us this evening. But before we give that opportunity a chance, does any other questions for Hannah before we see if the applicants want to speak to the council at all? All right, Amy or Pete, did you have anything else that you wanted to say in regards to your application this evening? Or?
Sure. Hi, I'm Amy Johnson. Thank you for, again, your consideration of this request. And again, we are very appreciative of the 11 years we've been able to experience the beauty of rowing on along the lake, and we've appreciated your support. As we've already shared this evening, we've strived hard, I believe, to be an integral part of the community, invested our time and energy into the community, and so appreciated that opportunity to be on the water and be part of the community. So just a few comments, I think, going forward. Safety, I feel like we've, I think someone mentioned the Minnesota DNR this evening in their talking, and all our coaches are Minnesota DNR boating license certified. I've actually already picked up the 2025 booklet that the Hennepin County Water Patrol gives out, so that our coaches have those available to us for our coaching staff. I just wanted to clarify the comment about peak hours that I think Anthony Quill had mentioned. We are not out on the lake during those prime Sunday or summer hours of Friday afternoons, Friday evenings. That's not part of the current amendment. Saturday afternoons, all day Sundays we're gone, and a few of the bullet points or comments we have sent on to the council to consider is that often on those busy summer weekends we are gone completely from the lake because we voluntarily decide not to have practices during those holidays. Memorial Day weekend we know is busy, so we have voluntarily not held our practices. 4th of July weekends, Labor Day weekends. So those are choices that we make, even though we have hours in our permit. We decide just to not even be out there to keep the lake accessible to all. And then we oftentimes have out-of-town regattas too, so we're not present then either. So yes, we have covered the parking. Gretchen Kashmir, as we have mentioned. has given us approval through the Union Cemetery. The board has approved that. I feel like we've strived to be respectful neighbors of other lake users. We are always open to conversations. We've, in the past, we've had an email from like one of the local swimmers, resident on the lake, and she contacted us. We had a few conversations. We amended some of our traffic patterns, so I feel like we're always open to, what can we do to work better together? We feel it's a lake for everyone, absolutely. We respect that it's a lake that everyone should be able to use, and so we're certainly not here to be affecting other people's using it. So I feel we've responded in the past when we've had some concerns that were brought to our attention, so certainly we're open to those conversations going forward. Also, one of the unique things I know that was mentioned about a private club, I feel like we are that community group that allows the access to this beautiful lake. Not everyone has a canoe or a kayak or a paddleboard to be able to go out there on the lake. So we're just one of those open access points to allow the public to get out on the water. So just a few comments on that. I did want to ask a question, or I want to clarify one comment about could we just use Thursday instead of Tuesday. So what the permit is looking like is that we have 4 evenings available. Again, as we've pointed out to you in some of our emails, just because we have hours available, the 63 hours or whatever it is, doesn't mean we're out there 63 hours. Currently, we're out there probably 25 to 28 hours or so. So that just gives us opportunity. The reason we'd originally put the Friday afternoon is because I get phone calls from people that want to take a lesson. I'm just getting off work on Friday. Why can't I come out and take a lesson? And so it's just, we have been trying to respond to people within our community that want to be able to enjoy rowing also. So, so recognizing that Friday afternoon is busier on the lake, we did remove that one in this most recent updated request to you. So we are looking at 4 Monday through Thursday, not weekends, Monday through Thursday evenings as a possibility. And then I want, if Hannah could pull up, what was number 13 that you had pulled up? The wording on that looks like it's changed from previously?
Correct. So it's to clarify that the use of the property for any activities by the rowing crew is subject to the hours of operation, which has always been the intent, regardless of if you're holding a class or if you're just utilizing it, it's still the rowing club facilities use.
So my understanding was from previous conversations, and I don't believe we were in violation of any permit. I believe Jeanette actually clarified for this in the past. It's the same as if I were to go to Gear West and rent a paddleboard, I can go out on the lake. If someone comes and checks off that they can row one of our rowing shells out on the water, it's an open access water to them. So in the past, we have been allowing our members, it's a public lake, our members are taking a shell that they are entitled to use, just as if I rented someone's canoe or kayak out during some of those hours that are not part of our permit. When the permit was given, my understanding was it was for the purpose of organized group business. So when we have our coached groups for our juniors, our masters, and then it was clarified in 2019 that lessons also fall under that. So what we had been informed was anytime we were conducting business, if a safety launch was on the water, that was what those hours pertained to. It did not pertain to someone independently coming and taking a shell out to enjoy rowing on the water.
I guess I have a question kind of related to that. Like the Gear West scenario, if somebody were to rent a paddleboard from Gear West and went to Nelson.
And they have.
Nelson is a public,
Correct.
with a public launch.
Correct.
With this CUP, is B3 allowed to be a public launch?
No.
Okay, so that's the distinction.
Correct.
Here, okay.
And I wasn't here in 2017, but reading the conditional use permit, it's clear that it is the rowing crew operations at the property, and that's any form of operations.
Okay.
And just to, so we've had a lot of communications in clarification with Water Patrol and with our city attorney over the years, and with what the council's intent of the CUP always has been. We did realize that there was some need for clarification in that option 13 to make more clear what the council's intent has always been, which is that any Long Lake rowing crew member activity of any nature was intended to be done within the CUP hours. And that includes using the equipment. Now, as Water Patrol has confirmed with us many times, anyone launching from any of the public launches on the lake, that's Summit or Nelson, or anyone, from private residences, whether you're launching a kayak or a rowing shell, a public use is a public use. Whether you're doing that from a private residence or a public launch, it's a public use, no matter what you're putting in the water. But anything of the rowing crew's operations out of Birches, because anytime there's an operation happening out of Birches site that is using Birches parking, the cemetery parking is actually Birches parking. It's Birches agreement with the cemetery. We have that confirmed from the cemetery, but the rowing crew is allowed to utilize that parking under Birches. So the agreement is actually with Birches and permits the rowing crew to use that same number of spaces that are available to Birches.
I was unaware that that was actually through Birches, because I've always worked directly with cemetery.
I have a copy of it right here.
The Union Cemetery folks. Brennan gave me the permission to go and ask for the use of the cemetery.
Yeah.
But he didn't say, we already have a contract for 7 days a week.
Yep, the email that I received today from the cemetery board says, the 2 parking spaces at the east end of the parking lot shall be, this is language from the agreement with Birches. And it says the 2 parking spaces at the east end of the parking lot shall be reserved for cemetery use. 12 parking spaces are designated for valet parking as depicted by the cars parked in a photo. She provided the overhead. Additionally, 3 valet parking spaces are allowed parallel parked on the south side of the lot. The west end of the parking lot is to be reserved for cemetery visitors. The rowers' use of the parking lot is under the umbrella of our agreement with Birches. The rowing club assists with landscape projects and general cleanup at the cemetery, for which they're very appreciative, as are any family members who have folks out there. So
the way I read that is that those same pool of spaces minus the 2 for cemetery visitors are being used for combination valet parking and rowers.
Correct.
And if, I don't know how that would work if the valets filled, it was a busy night or something, the valets filled them up, then
there are no more
rowers
spaces
would be-
available.
Or vice versa. if
Whoever
the
uses them
rowers-
first.
So
First come,
my
first served.
understanding from Brennan is that they do not use that valet parking Monday through Thursday. They use it for Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's possible.
Okay, just clarifying that
Okay.
we wouldn't be using the valet, or it wouldn't be crowded because both of us are trying to use it. So.
So I'm confused on the language, like use of the property and rowing equipment shall be limited, or by what I don't understand, or by rowing club members, staff, guests, or affiliates. So you have to have use of the property and a rowing equipment. Why is there an or by rowing club members, staff, guests, or affiliates? I don't understand the or.
I
wonder if
Can't
that's a
speak to the
typo,
or.
use of the property and rowing club equipment.
Because you want to say, anybody that uses the property and the rowing equipment has to do it between these hours.
I didn't write that condition, so I'm not able to speak to the or.
Can we ask, when was this condition entered? Because what we reviewed last Tuesday was not.
This was updated earlier today, correct, after conversations with our city attorney to clarify what the intent of, there was a vague word in there about rowing club purposes. And the discussion we had is that that needed to be more clear for all parties involved in the CUP.
Yeah,
Was that sent to the rowing club, that information, that
This-
change?
That was not, that this is an option for the council to consider this evening. And it was not presented as a formal action other than an option. Ultimately, I think we suspect that any action the council takes tonight outside of denying the amendment request is likely to amend any optional resolution that may be before you in some manner. So I think that's a dialogue you'd be having with the council on that.
Yeah, 2 things. I guess there's a question, apparently there's not real clear language on the independent rowing In other words, it's been our understanding that if an individual wants to go out, it wouldn't be unlike leaving the public launch. Obviously, it's from Birch's. It's one boat that goes out. So if there's clarification or if there's language that would be beneficial, we would need to have that. And then the second, and maybe it's a moot point, but in what you're describing there, any activities on the part of the rowing club within those hours, candidly, there's times that everybody is loading up the trailer to go to a regatta or coming back, and we're not on the water, but we're on Birch's property, and it may be outside those hours, the windows. But again, I would hope that would be construed as a moot point, because we're not on the water.
I think the language needs to be
But just to clarify that.
Just to be clear, this CUP is not for the water. This is a land use
Yes.
CUP.
Right.
Say use of
Right.
equipment and rowing for the water.
Understood.
Yeah.
And can I just bring up the concern or the question? We have many people that own their own shells, their own rowing equipment. So generally, they should be able to just use their equipment and go row. So you are, just to clarify this all, you are saying that if I own my own boat, but I happen to keep it at Birch's, I cannot go out and use it on Long Lake.
No, I think what we're talking about is equipment owned by the Long Lake Rowing Crew and checked out by members.
I guess I have a question on that, because, I mean, this is a
But-
public launch at that point.
That's the other thing too, does
I
the
didn't know
CUP
that.
even allow storage of private boats? That's another question.
Yeah, because I mean, if, this isn't a public launch. I think that's the distinction I'm trying to figure
Right,
out.
this
'Cause
is a private
B3 is
launch,
not,
correct.
and if you look at B3, it's, if you look at the,
Is it
you know,
a
it's it's
restaurant?
R6, which would say R5 and da-da-da, but it's R5 plus restaurant and tent, correct?
Correct.
And it'd be the use for a public, a person from the public taking their shell and placing it on the water at the location. Is that either within Birch's primary use as a restaurant or the CUP's use? If it's within the CUP's use, that's governed by the hours of the CUP.
I
But-
mean, there's no other use that it could be other than a rowing facility. I mean,
So-
I wasn't aware that there's storage of private boats happening, which is an entire separate use.
Yeah, because I look at this language that I see here, that I think was, it's what I assumed the language was already, but,
Because the original language, for those that aren't aware, is it was use, number 13 there, use of the property and Long Lake for rowing purposes shall be limited to Monday, blah, blah, blah. So the question was, that I've been hearing is, what's a rowing club purpose? And lots of people I talk to is part of, finding out more about what's going on here, is that, they'll say that the boats are on the lake like all the time. Like we'll see boats on Friday, afternoons or weekends or whatever. They use it all the time. And so as I think more about that, I didn't know much about this situation where I guess they could take them out individually or things like that. But, I don't know how we get into the business of sort of defining what's a rowing club purpose versus, if there's 4 boats on the lake one day and 4 shells on the boat the next day, which one's a rowing club sanctioned event, which isn't. To me, it's all the same. It's just kind of they're using the land to launch the shells from.
Yeah, two distinctions. There's equipment that's owned by the Long Lake Rowing Crew, and then there's the boats that are owned privately that are stored there. By their members, certainly. They're not owned by the Long Lake Rowing Crew. So when the definition was talking about equipment, so that's one distinction. Then the other is just the, lost my train of thought here.
How many shells?
Private boats do, a lot of those private boats get loaned to the clubs. We can, that's, as you know, boats are expensive, and so oftentimes those people are loaning their shells to us to be able to use with other rowers, and then they also, of course, can row it on their own also. So, and I'm really just referencing conversations we've all had. It was clarified very much. I remember Gina Joyce saying, okay, when you guys are out there with the safety launch, that is what we were talking about. Because didn't realize that the lessons were part of this operation, the CUP. We thought it was only the larger groups. So that was in 2019, and Gina Joyce had said to us, it is any time that you guys have the safety launch out. So that is how we've been operating, under that understanding, because of that conversation that happened at this meeting.
I'm not sure that Gina was on the
She was
council
on
in
council
2019,
No,
but
it was in, that was in March of 2022 when we were talking about the annual water use permit. And I think this exact conversation is really clarifying why there was some confusion about what rowing club purposes means. Because the council's intent has always been that any form of instruction, practice, coaching, lesson, private, group, etc., would be considered applicable to the CUP. That's what the council's intent always was. And when that happened in 2022, that is all the more reason that this needs to be better defined, I think, so that there's a clear understanding on both parties. Now, maybe, and this conversation has, come up, maybe it might not be the worst idea to consider tabling the application to the next meeting, and possibly a meeting between the applicant and one or two council members, not a quorum, obviously, between now and the next meeting to dial some of that in a little bit more. But I think everyone should have clear understanding and expectations of what condition 13 under any scenario means. All of that is a moot point if the council were to take an action denying it.
Can I say something? So the use of the property and rowing club equipment, kind of what you said, you have private boats and club boats. What is rowing property club equipment? Would that include the private boats? To your point, maybe the language here is unclear. And to your point, people want to come and take the boat off and load it onto outside of these hours. Is that use of the property and lower shall be limited? Do you have access? Because here it said for rowing club purposes. Maybe that was in there to say for rowing on the lake, as opposed to just taking the boats and loading them on a trailer.
Yeah, and I think like the regatta, if you're gonna load up Saturday morning,
Yeah.
that feels like a reasonable thing to.
Yeah.
Let's tow the boats up to the parking lot and, but
And
it
it
doesn't
says
feel like
use
that's
of the
within
property and
scope,
rowing
right?
club
Well, actually,
equipment, they would be
Saturday's fine,
using it,
but they're,
shall be limited to not Saturday. So the actual language is arguably, it would restrict you from doing that,
the current language, or the proposed
the proposed language.
language?
well, yeah, well, Saturday actually is covered, but,
But,
like
okay,
Sunday night, you
Yeah.
come back into town, right?
Yeah.
You wanna unload things and take them down. There's
to
not
be some
language that allows
language.
that, right?
Sure.
The Sunday night, 8 PM unload boat is not in the set of hours.
No.
And practically speaking, it seems like something that would be needed.
So you kind of need
Agreed.
some other language and get the or out.
Right, yeah, I think the or is a typo that wasn't supposed to be there. How many shells do you currently have there, Amy or Pete? I'll let you finish if you guys are talking, but. Like not, maybe, maybe not today, but yeah, typical summertime, how many shells are stored there? Any idea?
We have whatever fits on our 7 racks, probably about 30-ish.
Okay, so
In
there's,
various sizes.
okay, that's right, so you're limited by the racks, the CUP has the rack one in there, okay, that's what I was gonna get at.
It maybe makes sense to table it. I guess I would just propose that, I think the question, Jeanette, was just what is considered organized versus a few of the people here have a boat. They own their own boat. It doesn't belong to Long Lake, and they might want to just go out for a row at some point. So what I would propose is that if this is tabled and we can all kind of give it a little more thought, is that if it's a practice that's organized, with Long Lake coaches and a Long Lake launch, that ought to fall within the requested hours that's there. And it seems to me to be reasonable, and I'd ask that you would view it the same way, that if there's somebody here that owns their shell, happens to park it there at Birch's, and they just want to go out on the lake, like somebody might want to go out on their paddleboard or canoe, that you all wouldn't restrict that individual from doing that. So that's yeah, I just feel that's common sense. The big issue is,
why can't they use the public launch like everybody else?
well, that's a fair question. If you've ever been in a rowing shell, it's not 8 feet long, it's 18 or 28 feet long. So there's just some practical aspects about, granted, you know, then we could have practices technically, and we could take 20 of our shells over to the public lawn, and then we could be rowing on the lake all the time. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think that's fair to the others that are on the lake. But in return, I'd ask that it's just kind of fair and reasonable. Somebody owns their own shell, they want to go out, and that they're not restricted by the hours that we're proposing, that we organize, and we have our coaches and our equipment out.
Well, parking wouldn't be an issue if it's just one person using the shell.
But I think the
Of course
question,
not,
takes
no.
all the spots.
I think the question would be is if it's one person and then another person, then it
Yeah.
could be 6 people.
Yeah.
So it's.
No, I
And then
appreciate
it
what
falls
you're
back
saying.
on the zoning of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it does fall back on the zoning, and I honestly think we would probably need to consult with our city attorney. We weren't actually aware that there were privately owned shells being stored out there. We thought the equipment that was out there was actually solely under the ownership of the rowing crew. So I think I think that's another point that we need to clarify. I think there's points on both sides that could use some clarification.
I think
For both
the
parties.
question I was going to pose too is similar. I was looking at your guys' rules for independent rowing, and it doesn't address anything about time. It addresses when to check them out, how to check them out, things of that fashion, but it doesn't say anything in there about use and time use. Similar to what you said, you know, what's the understanding versus what is, you know,
Because we've
needs.
understood if you're following Minnesota DNR boating rules, you're entitled to be out and using the lake. So they typically don't go without lights or before sunrise, after sunset.
right.
So they've always followed boating rules.
And that's, once again, it's the rules.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. It's more of the CUP. You know, does your rules match the CUP rules so everybody's on the same page?
Okay, yeah, that'd be my, I mean, I think that's a great idea to study it further. I don't want to rush this through and have it be detrimental to, you know, any party involved here. So and this is a pretty, as you can tell, we rarely have anybody in our council chambers here. So this is an important issue, and we have folks from, you know, both sides and submissions from both sides. We're a lot of us here are kind of in the middle of this situation, as you might imagine. So I'd love to see this sort of hammered out more thoroughly, and that, you know, I wasn't here back in 2017 when this was first passed. I do remember this coming up a little bit back in 2019 or so. But for rowing club purposes, I just have so many questions when I read that, and it's, you know, I understand what you're trying to say as far as having an individual use it, but then what if, you know, six users show up at the same time and go out, and there's, you know, it's just like we can't put everything in writing, but at least have to have a little bit more clarity, I think, working with our staff on that. And then it sounds like there's the issue with the privately owned crafts and how that might play into this and that sort of thing. And then just another kind of reason for tabling is that, you know, yesterday was a holiday. It's kind of like, this doesn't usually happen for us as a city council, but we receive our packets late on a Friday morning, and we have the weekend to research them and read them. And we started, you know, firing off emails to our staff over the weekend, and they got inundated this morning when they came in, which isn't fair to them. And meant that they weren't able to really thoroughly answer, I think, a lot of our questions and that sort of thing too. So I would definitely be in favor of tabling it so we can, you know, discuss this further and have some further discussions about it. But
If I can just add one last item as you for your internal conversations, just frame of perspective again. If someone has their own rowing shell, they may have invested $8,000 or $10,000 or $12,000. So, you know, there's the public storage there has been on either end of the lake all along, and so I hope there'd be some understanding that it's really hard to leave a rowing launch in a public location like that because of security, and it's just been a pretty nice thing for some of the rowers that own their own shell to put it with all the other rowing equipment.
Would
So-
they move, if they had limited access and just kind of, would they move their shells and they wouldn't donate it to the club?
So you'll probably move
Okay.
clubs. This is a common practice at all rowing clubs, correct, Sandy? That if I go to Minneapolis Rowing Club, I can check a boat out and row. If I go to St. Paul Rowing Club, Duluth, any of those clubs, I can, after I've been approved for safety reasons as such, I can, during independent rowing hours, go out and enjoy a row. So it's just a common practice, and we've continued that common practice with our rowing club.
I think just if we are going to look at tabling this, since we have so many involved people here, can we gather the questions that we have maybe in kind of a form? I mean, I don't know if that's something, if this is recorded, it sounds like there's been about 7 or 8 or 9 different questions asked. I just want to make sure, since everybody's here, that we capture those somehow.
I do find myself also still wondering if there would be a value to a dialogue between the applicant and a member of the council or two, just to make sure there's no misunderstandings between either party, and so that we as a staff receive a little more clear direction on what we're researching and following up on.
Any
Because I think
volunteers
we
for that?
kind of were working on the fly today pretty hard, but I think I see the value in a little more communication.
You happy to do that?
Okay, that's good to know, and we can, yeah, if it's, we'll work with staff, have staff reach out to the council, and we'll identify somebody that be, is interested in that. I know, some of us have varying things going on right now with other topics and stuff, but I'm sure we can come up with somebody for you, and maybe there's somebody, you'd be willing to do it? Oh, that's great, okay. Thank you, Deirdre. Yeah, and our city attorney, obviously, and maybe there's involvement from someone from the planning commission or something too. I'll let staff kind of decide on that.
Roger, you've been quiet.
No one's asked me a question.
Well.
What's the population growth of Long Lake? About 20%.
How thick is the ice right now?
Well, it was that much for the Snowball Open. It's probably with the below zero we've had. It's probably somewhere between 2 and 3 feet.
Pete, did you?
You should send the presentation our direction.
I mean,
The only comment that I might have is I fall back on my training as an economist. The first rule of economics is scarcity. It is very, very rare, if impossible, for there to be sufficient resources to meet perceived needs in any situation. Of course, I'm also told the first rule of politics is to ignore the first rule of economics. Because everybody can have everything. I also, just having lived on the lake for most of my life, and hopefully turn 69 this summer. Yes, the lake gets busy, mostly a few weekends of the year. Is the lake busy at 6 a.m.? Absolutely not. Do I see a lot of water skiers out on the lake at 6 a.m.? No. Rare. Occasionally it happens. But what I do know is that this lake is uniquely situated for a lot of recreational activities. It's long east to west. The prevailing wind is primarily out of the north, which means that we don't have enough width of the lake, if you will, to create large waves like we do on Lake Minnetonka or other larger lakes. We have
A crosswind.
if there's a storm, and really high winds, we get whitecaps out there. Most of the time, the waves out there are relatively small. And even on a windy day, if the wind's out of the north, well, if you're on the north edge of the lake, it's fairly calm. If the wind's out of the south, on the south edge of the lake, it's fairly calm. There's always a bay that's relatively calm, most days. The problem is whether you want to sail. Well, sailors need wind. But if you're in a kayak or a canoe or a paddleboard or a racing scull, a rowing scull, or a rowboat or a water skier, you want smooth water. That's the best environment to be engaging in these activities. So we all want to operate in the same areas of the lake at the same time, no matter who it is, no matter what they're doing. And the fact of the matter is, if the rowing crew owned property on the lake, we wouldn't be having this discussion, because we would have absolutely no control over their hours of operation or how they operate. I see nothing in the CUP that says, they were told us at the Planning Commission, you guys agreed to go east to west on the north side of the lake and west to east on the south side of the lake. I don't see anything of that in the CUP. I don't see where we have any ability to control that. I heard people complaining that sometimes they'll cut across the middle of the lake, which tells me that some people were basically suggesting that the middle of the lake was, they had dibs on it, that they owned it. And I don't think that's a fact. I think the lake's controlled by the state of Minnesota and DNR regulations, and it's public waters. And as for safety, don't get me into ballast boats, wake boats. The most dangerous things that have developed on the lake in my lifetime. And I guess that's about it. Oh, noise. Somebody was worried about noise early in the morning. There is no amplified sound out there, and I don't know how you could hear them over the roar of the motors.
I would just like to say, you know, we have a lot of rowing crew members in attendance, and I think no one is debating what a wonderful thing it is to have the rowing crew here as a sport, what it brings to their community, to our community, to our business community. There is no debate about that. That's all an absolutely wonderful thing. It's unique and it's really delightful. But the matter before us tonight, and I applaud the council for doing this, is the land use application, because I do hear that your focus is, you know, related to what it should be, which is this is a conditional use permit for how a conditional use that is not a permitted primary use is occupying and operating out of a property. The restaurant is always going to be the permitted primary use. So the question to dial in is, you know, what is appropriate for how the secondary conditional use impacts that. I think the crew did a very smart and appropriate thing by recognizing that they were asking for hours that in the spring and summer months, Friday nights, there's no debate. Birch's parking is full. They're everywhere. So I think removing that from their request was a good decision and the right decision. So thank you for that. But there's definitely, I hear still more to dial out there. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. And yeah, I think you echoed what I was going to say too. But you know, I know we all appreciate getting all the emails we got and the letters we got, and hearing from you tonight. You know, overall, this council has been very supportive of the Long Lake Rowing Club. I think it does great things for our community, and we had some people who are emotional tonight speaking. So that was impactful to hear that. And while we're all weighing, you know, various factors amongst all of this, and you guys are certainly a big part of that. So thank you for coming and speaking to those who spoke tonight, and for submitting emails. I've read all the emails that were submitted before noon at least. I don't think I replied to any of them because I'm so swamped, but I did read them, and thank you. And I'm sure other council members did as well. So with that, any other comments? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to table this item and to direct staff and Councilmember Qualley to engage in further conversations with the rowing club and see if there's a compromise. Just so everybody knows, it failed at the planning commission, and we all, entrust our planning commissioners to do their great work that they do, and so that's a reason why, I don't think this would have passed tonight in this condition, but this would have required a 4/5 vote. It's kind of a supermajority kind of a situation where 4 of the 5 of us would have had to vote for this to pass. So that's another thing that I'm cognizant of, and want to make sure that we have some language that would work for that, and maybe we can't work it out, but we want to at least talk about it further. So, all right. So I made a motion on that.
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you for coming this evening.
Talk about fire?
No, I don't think so.
We're making progress.
And head out, Brian. All right, 8, other business.
Yeah, what about other business?
Just give it
Is that even part of the?
give it a second here
Do you want
to
to hear the good stuff?
give it a minute for people to gather their things.
The whole place just cleared out.
At least a couple would stay.
Even Brian's not staying.
Right, usually stays. Okay, we'll go do other business now. Go around, Councilmember Newcomer. Anything for other business?
No, I'll be attending the end of this week, the newly elected People's Thing. So I'll be gone for Friday and Saturday attending that, and I'm busy watching classes, learning about a lot of the procedural things that I'm I'm learning a lot.
Excellent. Glad you're attending that, and I think most of us, or all of us, have, and it's really good learning opportunity, and good to meet people that are in your shoes too from other cities that are brand new to all of us.
The only thing else is with Hannah and all of you guys, thanks for your time today. It
Yeah.
was, I know, a scramble for everybody, and a lot of lunches and coffees were missed, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councilman Feldman.
So we brought it up in the work session, but we did talk about brine a little bit. The brining, I keep saying the word
Brine.
brine and salt. Sorry, I got something in my throat here tonight.
Came
I
up with the
I keep
planning
saying
commission.
brine
Yes,
instead of
yes.
They used to
But-
brine meat.
Yeah, but so anyway, it's Sean's going to look into just the cost, and I mean, really, there's a lot of options. Buying a truck, I'm guessing, is 150 grand, and there's some extreme to cheap options, and what's effective and whatnot. So I think there's a test. Isn't there a test strip that we're going to do next time it gets to the level?
Yeah, if we get any rain, not the rain, snow, and the temperatures are right, we're gonna work with Orono to go down Watertown Road, I think go up one road and then go down Grand, so we can get a loop and see what it does.
Just see it, yeah. And it's pretty, I mean, it's like a 12, 15 degree range that they can apply that
Yeah,
or
it was
something?
like 20 to 31 degrees.
Okay, yeah, there's a bunch I don't understand about it. But anyway, the question was posed to Sean, and he's looking into it. That's it?
All right, great. Thank you. Councilmember Dybek.
I was going to make a statement during the rowing club thing, but since we're tabling it anyway, I'll save it for next time. But
Okay, probably get another chance.
yeah,
Okay.
but nothing else.
All right, just a quick fire update for the rest of the council that Councilmember Dybek and I met with our Orono counterparts last Thursday, and we're going to meet with them again on this Thursday. And I think we've been invite our city administrators to join us as well. And I know Scott's available. I haven't heard back if Orono's administrator is available. But we've continue to have some really good discussions with our Orono counterparts, and are hopeful that we can come to resolution here in the not too distant future. So just a quick update on that. That's it for me.
Did attend the LMCC meeting last week, and you'll be happy to know that we did get applications, because it had to go out for a public notice, applications from both Midco and Comcast.
Really?
So, both, yep. And so we voted to proceed with negotiations for a franchise agreement with both. So this would be with the TV, as part of the TV. Because just,
And internet?
yeah, and internet.
Wow.
And then I know, but like
For the city you're talking about?
Yeah, for
For the whole.
Like
The whole
fiber
s-
for the city?
area
Right,
served
right.
by
so
those.
would they have to would Comcast have to dig new coax to every house, or can they go and snake somebody else's line?
They'll put, there was a lot of discussion, and they were gonna reach out to Public Works in the community to kind of, how do they coordinate that? Because if both companies come in, they're gonna have to lay line, and Midco did say they were laying fiber. I think mostly Comcast, I don't know if they specifically said fiber or other cable, but kind of coordinating how they would put that in. And I don't think, what was it, my recollection? So there's certain, we're not on the first cities to kind of.
First fringe.
Yeah, shovels in the ground. Definitely for Midco, and I think Comcast kind of might, they may looking at a different geographic area first, so.
I know Comcast did Wyzetta, they ran fiber through Wyzetta a couple of years ago, so I think that's what they're using. Would there be a scenario where we'd have 3 then? Could we have?
Yeah.
I could get
Because right now we have Century,
or MediaCom.
That's the
MediaCom,
whole-
and potentially Comcast and
Yeah.
Midco.
Yeah, so, it was interesting.
I do need to change my email.
That both applied, and one of the questions was,
CHS.
Bob Bose is the attorney, he asked them, is there enough demand
MCHS.com.
for all of the companies?
I cannot believe how much I.
Yeah, well, right, that's a lot.
Everybody in town should dual ISP.
Yeah.
And
Do what?
have 2 ISPs. But I mean, like having good, I mean, you think about the BP station and that, I hear people talk about, if you're gonna make office space somewhere,
Emails now.
Long Link's not even on the radar. Why would you have an
Right.
office here when you have
We
terrible
hear
internet?
complaints.
But if we had some competition and decent lines, then I think you can attract a different group.
It'd be really wonderful if a little competition would encourage MediaCom to perhaps up their performance.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you can switch lowers the price.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the best news I've heard all day. Got any more?
Great.
Great.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the stacks,
Well-
we wouldn't have had the opportunity to get high-speed internet through MediaCom here, because I think, while they certainly haven't, we were talking about this a second ago in a sidebar, they really haven't necessarily made a lot of updates around the community, but the installation of the stacks brought higher-speed internet from MediaCom available to our location. But otherwise, they wouldn't have made any changes.
Yeah.
So Maple Plain just signed a franchise agreement with Midco a couple weeks ago.
Because they're not in the LMCC, correct? I
Oh,
saw that.
Right.
Right.
So, the LMCC is gonna, kind of do the franchise agreement for all the communities that are part of the LMCC. So they take care of that and the legal cost for doing it.
And so will that help them be more cash flow? Does it help them get them above water a little bit more?
It would be nice, but I think for it to all come online, it's gonna take a little while.
Okay. I just didn't know how
But
the
yeah,
cash
no, it
contribution to them,
does help.
peg fees, I guess.
Yeah, PEG, franchise fees.
Okay.
Any updates on their building and a buyer for the building?
Oh, no,
Okay. All right.
nope,
All right.
there hasn't been much activity.
Got it. All right, Scott.
I don't have anything.
All right, Jeanette.
Nothing, thank you.
Is he busy?
Other than wondering if any other council members might be interested in joining that meeting effort with
That
the
could be
rowing.
two, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it's, one is wonderful, 2 might be even better. So if there's anybody else who might be willing, please reach out to me and let me know, and we'll see what we can schedule.
Sounds
I mean,
good.
Yeah, I know you got fire, and, well, we have fire too. Just talk to me. Or did you say you might do it, or?
No, I did not say
Oh,
that,
okay.
but-
'Cause I mean,
That's clever, but-
I could potentially do it too. It's up to you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, if you wanna, you be the primary, and I'll back you up.
Okay, that'd be great.
Harassing Scott with a bunch of fire stuff the next couple of weeks, so. we'll-
Right, John, I gotta kind of focus on it here too,
For
so.
fire, relief, okay.
All relief.
And really, we need to do some simulations. Scott's gotten a bunch of data together. But there's a lot of pieces we gotta get together so we can understand that. And the negotiations also play into the fire relief
Yeah.
thing, which we've tabled, so we gotta figure that out. It's not easy.
No,
We'll get it figured
it
out.
kind of might be tabled for a little while until, because some of those issues aren't going to be resolved in the short term.
Yeah, it really depends on the timeline here, which they can't tell us about, so.
Okay.
That's, hopefully.
Okay,
That we can
okay.
get that stuff figured out, so.
All right, nothing else, Jeanette?
That's it, thank you.
Roger, you got a rare opportunity at the mic here. Anything else you want to add about planning commission update, or you guys?
Well, there really
Any work to
hasn't
do?
been, the fact that Long Lake, unlike, I'd hazard a guess, better than 90% of the communities in the metro area, actually not only met but exceeded our increased density goals and our increased housing units in the 2040 plan. Because most cities you have to plan for it, but you don't actually have to achieve it. We did, and
That just means that they'll.
Give you more.
We're already hearing
well,
that.
Yeah, they say they wanted to increase, I read in the paper, near density up to 4 per acre rather than 3 or 3.5 that it was. I don't think that applies to Long Lake. We're far enough out, although we were first designated in the 2050 vision as being
I know we sent a letter and did
city
that all get
edge,
resolved?
Yeah.
which
Okay.
made absolutely no sense because we didn't meet a single one of their criteria. So obviously that must have been an error, somebody smoking too much or something over at the Met Council.
Made somebody really mad over there.
Yeah.
Neither we nor Excelsior are still classified as urban.
Yeah,
Urban
Yeah,
edge,
that
yeah.
was taken care of, yes.
But, I'd have to run the numbers to see. I would think that with these additional multifamilies and the physical size of Long Lake, we must be pretty close to that 3.5 per acre goal
We're 1
already.
square mile, right?
Kind of looks that way.
2,200 people now, maybe?
Well, we'll find out in the
Yeah.
next census, that's part of the problem. 1859 at the last census, I think. My estimate was 140 new housing units and on average at least 2 people, so figure 400 on top of 1,800, that's a significant increase. And obviously we have new restaurants opening because of it, so. But other than that, that little corner downtown here that we can't seem to do anything with, I'm not sure what other development opportunities there are in our town unless we want to start allowing duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes and townhomes in our residential areas, most of which are older and relatively small lots. We could start splitting up some of the larger estates. I could probably get 4 more houses on mine.
Neighbors would love that.
Oh, my neighbors would love that.
Maybe we could rezone it for
Yeah, I was-
rowing club.
Think of-
Well, I could buy a rowing scull and put it down by the shore and go rowing anytime I want. What if I let a friend keep a rowing scull at my house? Can they go rowing anytime they want? I believe so.
Yeah, actually, our city attorney used that analogy today. For example, if Brennan, as owner of Birch's, owned his own rowing shell, he could do that. He could keep that at the Birch's launch, and if he wanted to allow anyone as a friend of his to use his rowing shell, he's allowed to do that. It's as a public user.
Right, when we talk about private launch versus public launch, well, I guess my shoreline's a private launch then too, so is yours, but that doesn't mean it's restricted.
Sorry, you remind me something of the comp plan. We at our Northwest Hennepin group last week, that was a discussion, and we're already getting to the point now, and most of you haven't been involved in this, John has, and Deirdre, but of our 10-year comp plan is cities are already starting to get started on this in a couple of examples. So that's flew by. It seems like we just did it. The Met Council members a couple of them were at this meeting, including our Dr. Tyrone Carter, and they get a lot of feedback from small cities like ours, which are not growing. There's no room to expand, and the incredible amount of money and resources we put into preparing these comp plans, along with our consultants many times. and they're not able to change that at the Met Council level from what they're telling us. It actually requires a statute change to reduce some of the language or the requirements, and it would be something just for smaller cities under whatever population that are, maybe come up with a square mile or something. But it's probably something we want to consider talking with our state representatives about in the future. Maybe we talked about maybe kind of lobbying for something like that, to where we
That's
could
a
bring a
great idea.
proposal forward.
I've actually raised that issue before, that it just seems to be so exorbitant to be placing this burden on small cities, especially when you're talking populations of 5,000 and under, where redevelopment is inevitably going to involve removal of existing housing stock to make that happen. I mean, the likelihood of that, and to ask a small population base to essentially be supporting what can be a $30,000 to $50,000 document update initiative for a planning guiding document, it's a big ask. And it really feels exorbitant for that burden to be placed on small cities as often as it is.
And the document seems, it's so voluminous and so detailed. It
Yes,
seems
and
like
their requirements.
why do we need
And
all
yet-
of it? Could we have a abridged version?
Well, we
Right.
tried that the
Yeah.
last time, and they kicked it back and said, no,
Very
you didn't put
emphatically.
everything in it. And the problem is, 90% of that voluminous document didn't change.
Right.
It's the same stuff. We have the same soils.
Yeah.
We have the same drainage.
Yeah, maybe we could, at the state level, kind of have an updated, just certain parts of it.
But that would be nice, just the parts that have to do with planning.
Right.
I mean, if the Met Council is about planning, shouldn't we focus on the planning part? And why do we have to, this is a fine example of government inefficiency. There is absolutely no reason for us to reproduce the same book every 10 years.
Right. So it's more to come, hopefully, but that's on the horizon, or in Lance, people are looking at that. All right, if there's no objection, I'll adjourn the meeting. Hearing none, meeting is adjourned at 8:27 PM.